Hey, Marvin, welcome back, and welcome everyone back to the Road Trip Flip. My name is Andy, and Marvin, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I understand that we have kind of I shouldn't say a short story today, but a important story that is, I'm sure, can kind of live on for ages about a really good buddy of yours, Marce. Yep. And, we're kind of like yucking it up here about cars and bikes and all that and sharing fun adventures. But I know you had a special story you wanted to share about him. So, thanks for kind of, breaking the mold a little bit and kind of talking about this. It's a little outside of the context, but not completely out of the context of what we do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start today?
So, well, it's a story about a family member that we're not related by blood. And as you probably know, us Filipinos, everybody's related, right? So the story goes back really far, and I'll set a little bit of history for you. Back in 1901, after the Spanish-American War, United States decided that they were going to start hiring Filipinos into the military. And so that went for many years. And now they had very limited job opportunities in the military, but it was the beginning of a great relationship for the Philippines and the United States. So fast forward to World War II, and it was very common for Filipinos to join in the Philippines, join the United States military. And in our case, the case of my father and Marcelino Carino's dad, they joined the Navy. And they joined in the Philippines, and after a certain amount of time had passed, they were able to naturalize and become American citizens. But the great thing is that I wouldn't be sitting here today if our fathers hadn't done that. So in World War II, the common job for Filipinos was a steward. And if you look at the word, it comes from the hospitality industry. So the stewards in the Navy, specifically for my dad, they were cooking, cleaning, taking care of the officers aboard ship, and even when they were land-based, my dad was on an aircraft carrier. Well, actually, he was on several at large ships, taking care of admirals. So he was lucky enough to, during the 1950s, change rates, which is a job description for the military. He was able to change rate from steward to a yeoman, and that's another word for office administrator. And same thing for Marcy's dad. And they were able to have great long careers and retire from the military. And if you know anything about Filipinos in Southern California, there was a Navy base in Long Beach in the LBC, and that's where I was born. And there's obviously San Diego is a big Navy town, a lot of ships here. So my dad was stationed in both places, along with a host of other places throughout the West Coast and even Texas and Florida, all the same places I've been in my Navy career. So they were able to have, like I said, long, great careers in the Navy, and they were able to bring their families over and start raising a family. Marcy's family, they moved to Compton in the 50s and 60s when Compton was a little different. And my dad stayed in Long Beach, and we ended up in Carson. Well, so did Marcy's dad. Marcy moved to Carson, California, which is in the LA area. And a lot of our friends and family are still there in the South Bay, Carson, and I still have family all over the LA and Orange County area. I'm one of the only ones down here.
Now, is that so? I know that the roots of this is really their friendship, but
correct.
That is that when they moved to LA, is that when the car scene kind of became a thing for them? And that
Absolutely.
is that where the connection kind of forged and how that weaves into the road trip flip part of this?
Absolutely, yes. And Marcy's dad was just like mine. They were car enthusiasts. My dad probably more so. I remember he had a 68 Camaro that I never saw because it got stolen in the 60s.
Oh,
so he ended up getting a Mustang. And yes, and Marcy's dad, I remember seeing an old black and white photo of Marcy's dad standing next to like a Lincoln Continental, if not a late 50s version, one of the first Continentals.
Super cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll see if I can dig that up, and we'll post it here. But yes, those two, after they left the military, they got their civilian jobs, and then when they could, they bought their first vehicles. So fast forward to the 60s, they're out of the military, and they started having a bunch of kids. I'm the youngest of all of them. Marce was amongst the oldest, so Marce was probably about 10 years older than me, and he was great friends with all of my older brothers and sisters. It just so happened our house was kind of like the central meeting place for all of the friends and family and all of the children of the military service members. So I had a whole bunch of cousins there. And it was almost always every weekend, some form of an impromptu car show at my house. I remember seeing a Ford Cougar that had shaved door handles, and the door handle was actually at the rear bumper with a solenoid. So yeah, the doors would pop open.
Oh,
and
this
is
really cool.
This is in the 70s. So I was like hooked when I started seeing these car shows, and my friends went through a whole litany of friends that had come from different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Started with lowriders, then it became surfers, and so now you can see how my.
So wait a minute. So is that where the whole like wagon and van thing started?
That's where it set the hook for me.
Okay. Was this part of the teaser? Because you're like, there's stuff I'm going to tell you in this story that that's going to make everything make sense. So
this is all where
this is where that started?
Yes. There were motorcycles, there were cars, there were vans, there were a lot of lowriders.
Okay, so how old were you when this is happening? When these cars are rolling in, you're rolling into your neighborhood, to your house, and
I'm like 6 or 7 years old.
Oh wow!
And all of this is like locked into my head because I thought, okay, I want to have that when I grow up.
How much of today I'll say your affinity for like vans and wagons, how much of that is just because of surfing, and how much of that is because of your fond memories of this story you're telling right now? Is it kind of both? It's
about 50-50. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's about the same because all of those good memories as a kid just formulated into what I am now and what I'm a big fan of now.
Yeah, it's like part nostalgia and part utility.
Correct. And that's going to be in another future video about how I picked all of these, because that's an interesting story too. Well, it's probably more interesting to me, but hopefully for you. Marce went to the same high school as all of my older brothers and sisters, and he eventually became an upholsterer.
Oh.
For 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was working on one of my cars. I had a 66 Impala, and he was going to do the interior for me on it. And yeah, that guy, I could see he had the work ethic of our fathers. That guy pretty much lived at his shop, and he did all kinds of stuff. I mean, I remember seeing a barber chair, an old school chrome barber's chair, on the swivel. He had reupholstered one of those. He did a lot of boats, a lot of custom cars. Not to name drop too much, but he did some work for Chip Foose.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Yes.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, that is a name drop, but that's not like in a not. I know you don't mean it that way, but right. I mean that's like instant credibility.
Yes, he did really well for himself.
That's really cool.
He really worked hard at it for 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, Chip Foose ain't just picking up nobody.
Yeah, true. And so, he did collect a few cars and motorcycles of his own. They were in his shop. He lived in he worked in a big shop that was able to house all of these vehicles. And one of them in particular was a 1967 Triumph Trophy. And that's the subject of this story, which is, it was a hardtail chopper. It had a Springer front end, no brake in the front. The controls were switched, where if you ride motorcycles, normally the gear shift is on the left foot and the brake is on the right. Well, this was switched. Yeah. No front brake. And then the frame originally had shocks in the back, but there's this thing called a weld-on hardtail section where they take off the swing arm and they put on a hardtail, where there's no shocks in the back.
Right.
The only suspension is the springs in the seat, which there's not much suspension.
Not offering you much in that.
No. And then the rear brake was a drum brake, and it wasn't very effective.
This thing sounds like a Franken bike.
Yes.
You're not. I know you're not saying it's a bunch of like random pieces put together, but
No,
the characteristics of this bike are certainly abnormal.
It was for the hardcore enthusiast that liked choppers.
Yeah.
And wasn't exactly me, but the part where I come into the picture is, unfortunately, Marce passed away. And so the family calls me because they know I'm a motorcycle rider and I love old vehicles, and that I had this business relationship with Marce because he was going to be working on my Impala. It was a sad day when he passed away because there was so much history in his shop, and the family was looking at that bike going, hey, Marvin should have this bike. And I wasn't exactly a hardtail chopper guy, but the sentimental value was great.
Oh, through the roof.
Yeah. So after talking with the family, it did help with burial expenses and stuff like that, and just settling his estate.
Mm-hmm.
All of the above, as far as closing out a family member's life, and just settling things. So that helped, and it was interesting for me because I had this museum piece.
Wow.
That belonged to a family member.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I never rode it because I was afraid of the thing. I'm almost afraid to ride it.
Well, yeah, based on your description you just gave me, I'd be a little hesitant too. Your brain has to like rewire itself to do everything. And no, by the way, no front brake.
No front brake. Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
And then it had this longer than normal front end, and it was raked, so it looked like your typical chopper.
You know what it sounds like, though? It may look like a chopper. It sounds like it's intentionally difficult.
Yes. And, God bless him, Marce was the man to do it because, he rode the thing.
I mean, I guess it's a little bit of like, you're kind of like thief-proofing it, aren't you?
Yeah.
No one's just going to get on that thing and just ride it.
Right. No, I don't think anybody could have come to, including me, and I've ridden a lot, including me, because I've never ridden with the control switch.
Yeah, I can't. Mike, you were describing that, and I'm thinking, okay, like I've ridden quads and dirt bikes, and I'm like, I would have to like be so forcefully focused on making sure I was doing the right thing while trying to ride. That would take some getting used to.
It would have been a challenge. It didn't have an electric starter, so it was.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was kickstart only.
Wow, this gets better.
It was only a 650 cc, so the compression was, it wasn't that hard to kick over, but still, you had to kickstart it every time.
Yeah, but still, your list continues to grow of its quirks and features.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and I have a video of it running a couple different times when I kicked it over, but yeah, I never took it even around the block in my neighborhood.
So it just sat.
It sat. Yeah. Well, so fast forward, I'm telling this same story exactly like I'm telling you.
Sure.
To a buddy of mine, Doug. Now, Doug, this guy has an interesting story as well, just like Marce, because we're all a bunch of gearheads. We're all a bunch of car and motorcycle enthusiasts. Doug is, among many things, first he was in the Marine Corps as a search and rescue crew chief and rescue swimmer. And I met Doug through the veterans group that I volunteer with to teach veterans how to surf. Mm-hmm. He's a great waterman, being a rescue swimmer, so he's really comfortable in the water. But during the 80s and 90s, he was actually a professional racer for Honda, motorcycle racer. Yeah, and on top of being all of that, while he was a rescue swimmer and a crew chief, he was an aircraft mechanic. And so he went on to get his airframe and power plant license or certification to become a civilian aircraft mechanic in airframes and power plants. And he had his own shop. He actually had his own hangar, his own company that repaired airplanes out in El Cajon. And he ran that with his son for many years. So I'm telling Doug about this story, and as I'm telling him more and more, just like you, he's going, I love Triumphs, and dude, if you ever want to get rid of it, if you ever want to sell it, call me first. And I said, well, I've actually been thinking about it because I can't ride it. It's a runner, but it needs things that I would want to add, like brakes.
like a front brake,
Right.
just to mention
Right.
a thing or two.
Yeah, and maybe some better suspension. So, a long story short, one thing leads to another, and Doug says, I want to buy it from you. So, I gave Doug the bro deal, and I sold it to him. So, here's the things Doug's doing to it, though.
How long did you have it, though? So you
I
you
had
didn't
it
have it very long.
Not
you
very
said,
long, less than a year.
So Marcy passed in what year? In
22.
22. Okay.
Yeah, I had it till some part in 23.
Oh, okay.
And I sold it to Doug then.
All right. So
And-
you had it about a year, and at this time, Doug's had it about a year too.
Yes, yes, and he's already started the restoration process.
Now, is he going to put the controls back to the? No, or is he going to leave them?
No, it has to stay that way.
Has to stay that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, Doug, again, he is a career motorhead where he can ride and drive anything.
Well, that you've told me that about him before. That's why I was asking, like, well, if he also knows how to fix stuff around.
Yes.
So I don't know if maybe that was going to be part of it too. But
so he has had it for at least a year. He had to put things on hold. One thing I should add about Doug, and this guy is a special person in my life because he's, I'm surrounded by good people.
Yeah.
Marce included, you included, Doug, special guy. He's a cancer survivor. He had brain cancer. Yeah. And so he's kicked it.
Yeah.
He's doing well. He's back to working on the bike. But here's the things he's doing. He cut the neck and changed the rake of the front end. He put a hydraulic front end back on it, just like normal shocks.
Nice.
In the front.
Nice.
Got rid of the springer. I think he kept the springer, but he got rid of that end, that front end, put a hydraulic front end in it with brakes.
With brakes.
Yeah, that matched the front tire, the front rim. He kept the hardtail, but he re-engineered the seat setup so that he's got better springs in it.
Nice.
And then he's got different sheet metal, different fenders, different oil tank. He's making it a lot more user-friendly. And I can't wait to see it. He says he's going to be done with it soon, so we'll probably see him again, and we'll see the bike again.
I would love to see it when it's done, because I can imagine it's going to have a lot of its same characteristics, kind of look like the same bike, but also look a little bit different too.
Yes. And Doug is actually, because he's, we're about the same age, so it's going to be period specific back to the 70s, but it's just not going to be the hardtail chopper look anymore.
Yeah, and it'll still be theft proof.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. There is a video of it that I'll include. It's of the engine running. This thing is rowdy. So it's going to be a great bike. I can't wait to see it and hear it again. Hopefully, maybe he'll let me ride it, but in closed circuit. Right?
Yeah, and
it's. I'm still a little intimidated by the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to show it to you.
What is one of the things that when you think back about Marce? What's one of your most fond memories as we're sitting here today and talking about him and talking about the bike? What's something that you'll just kind of carry on forever and cherish?
Marce reminds me of our dads. While he didn't look like them in terms of how he dressed and how he carried himself, his work ethic, his love for vehicles, and what he did for the industry. And then on top of that, I mean, he's like my older brother, even though we called each other cousins, he's family. And sometimes you can't describe the love you feel for family. And, I miss the guy. I wish he would have been still around to work on my Impala. Didn't work out, but that's okay. I still have that bike, and I still have Doug working on it. And Doug will keep that thing forever.
Wow, Marvin, that's quite the story, because, a lot of times, since we've been doing this, we're talking about your adventures and spending time with people. And this is the first time we've actually stopped and talked about someone who you aren't spending time with anymore. So thank you for sharing Marce's very important story, but also how important he was to you. And it's also interesting to me with the family background with your fathers and serving in the military. Obviously, that's like really important because of our family having a lot of similarities on the Cruz side of our family. Very similar to what you just described here between you and Marce. So thank you for talking about that. And I really can't wait to see what Doug does with the bike. And I think maybe more than anything else, I can't wait to see you try and ride it. That's not a challenge. That's not a challenge. I'm saying try in the most delicate way possible. You've flown helicopters. I'm pretty confident you're going to be able to ride this bike, but I am going to use the word try today. Sound fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. Well, thanks, Marvin. I really appreciate it. And once again, awesome story.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me. I always enjoy my time here with you. Hey, thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time coming in and getting this far in Marce's story. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you can find out about the next one that's coming up. And leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. Once again, thanks again, and I will see you on the flip side.